What if the voice inside your head isn't you? What if you've spent your whole life listening to guidance, recommendations, suggestions, and advice from a complete stranger? Now, I know that sounds crazy, but bear with me, because you can't be both the one speaking and the one listening. So if there's a voice inside your head that's saying something, who's the one that's listening? Are you the one speaking, or are you the one listening? I know that concept is kind of wild, but if you think about it, the thoughts that we have an impact on how we feel. The thoughts that we have can affect our emotions, and they can affect the way that we respond to life. So if we have a voice inside of our head that is negative and toxic, that is critical of us, that is insulting, that is demanding, that is, for lack of better words, abusive, yes, we can be abusive to ourselves. We can reinforce patterns of negativity that were directed toward us as children. So if we had an overbearing parent or a coach or a teacher, that voice inside of our head may be a combination of all those negative voices, putting pressure on ourselves to be better, to not make a mistake, to be the best, to be a high achiever, and also to criticize us. Oh, I'm so stupid. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, why did I do that? Why did I say that? And this voice can be both critical of us and demanding of us. Now, if you notice that you've had a voice inside your head that's been critical and demanding and overbearing sometimes, well, the question is, where did that voice come from? Do you notice it similar to a parent that maybe was overbearing? Do you notice that it sounds similar to someone that made you feel that way when you were younger? Because if that's true, and we learned that voice when we were younger, well, as adults, it's our responsibility to recognize if we are reacting and responding to past conditioning and patterns that no longer serve us. And then it becomes our responsibility to practice and develop a deeper awareness around that voice. So when that voice says something, we can just ask it, is that thought helpful? Is that thought healthy? Does that thought drive me into a future understanding and relationship with myself that is beneficial for me and healthy for me? Or is it just going to continue to keep me stuck in these cycles and patterns of negativity and self-contempt and being critical and blaming ourselves for all the things wrong in our lives, constantly turning us into victims or constantly feeling like the world is against us? Because if that's the narrative that the voice is telling us, well, although it may not be your fault, it is your responsibility to fix it. Otherwise, you'll just contribute to more suffering for yourself and all the other people you come in contact with. And I know this because I've been through it. I've listened to that voice inside my head. I've let it be critical of me. I've let it make me feel less than. And in a lot of ways, it kept me stuck in these patterns of feeling like I didn't really know who I was. And as I became an adult, that voice was something that I just started to become more consciously aware of. I started to become aware of the repeating patterns. And as I became aware of the repeating patterns, I didn't have to do anything. I just had to gently sit with the feelings that I was feeling and recognize that I was feeling this negative feeling. Once I recognized it, it was so much less powerful. Once I recognized that I was kind of having these feelings and emotions as a result of the thoughts, once I became aware of it, the emotion, the heaviness of it diminished significantly. And I would also, that's where I started practicing breath work, because what I did was I wanted to get to the point where I was able to find a practice that would remind me every time before I got sucked into the world of negativity, I wanted to find a way out. And so just like a fish, you put a worm, a juicy worm on a hook, and then I'd be swimming along in life and all of a sudden a hook would be thrown out there. Somebody would say something or something would trigger me from the past. And sure enough, I would bite that hook. and I would get reeled in, and I'd be in drama. I'd be either in conflict with the other person or replaying all these thoughts about what I would say to the person. Oh, I'll try, when I tell him, I'm going to tell him this, and if he says this, or I'll say this, or how dare she thinks that, and so I would wind up in these conversations, fictitious conversations that usually never happened, and I would find myself just caught up in this drama. And this was a younger version of me that was trying to protect itself from being bullied or taken advantage of. And so before you bite that hook and get sucked into the drama, before you believe that voice in your head, because you don't need to believe everything that voice is telling you. So if you notice that juicy worm on the hook, and you notice that your attention is getting taken into this story, this drama, you can also recognize in that point, you can say, wow, I notice I'm triggered. I notice I bit that hook. I notice that I am feeling like I want to get dragged into this drama. And my emotions, you can actually feel it. Sometimes the adrenaline and the cortisol, it just lights you up and you can feel stressed out and on edge. So if you notice yourself get triggered, that's where the breath work becomes important, because we can use a long, slow, deep breath in through the nose to fill our belly, and then making the exhale longer than the inhale. And if we can simply start to notice the quality and the power of our breath when we get triggered, then we don't need to get reeled into that drama. We don't need to bite that hook, and we don't need to give our energy and power away. And we can also, I know this sounds strange, but we can also have a conversation with this voice. We can put our hand on our belly, a hand on our heart, and we can be kind to ourselves. And we can remind ourselves that those thoughts are not helpful, that we don't need to waste our time having fictitious arguments with people, that we don't need to get sucked into the drama by biting the hook, that someone may be tempting us with their own drama. We don't need to get engaged. We don't need to get involved. And when we start to recognize that we give so much of our power away reacting to things, trying to channel anger and frustration and fear into these stories, we draw back our energy and we can just observe what's happening. Almost like a cloud in the sky. You can look at a cloud in the sky and you can see that it's there, it's real. I'm not saying the thought is fake. I'm just saying we don't have to become attached to it. We can just let it pass by. Or think of it like waves in the ocean. The ocean is the mind and the waves are the thoughts. Now, the wave is going to crash, but we don't have to get hit by that wave. We can just let the wave come and go. And that energy dissipates out of it. But if we get caught up in the wave, if we get caught up in the drama, if we bite that hook, then we're going to get dragged away into the drama and we're going to suffer. And most likely, not only are we going to suffer, but we're going to make the people that love us suffer as well, while we are caught up in this drama, flailing around in fear and confusion. So if that sounds familiar to you, a great way to just remind yourself to recognize this voice in your head and know that you don't have to believe it is to recognize if you have a thought that's looping. If you have a thought that's looping, that's a good reminder that you can stop, take that breath, and just become aware of the thought. And that will take a tremendous amount of the power away. Another thing we can do is, if we notice that we're triggered, that our body's taken over, and our respirations become shallow, and our adrenaline is cranking, and we become charged, we, in that moment, if we can, just try to remember to take a deep breath. In through the nose, fill the belly, and then make that exhale longer than the inhale. And sometimes just practicing a few conscious breaths, having that conversation with ourselves. I don't want to get sucked into that drama. This is not healthy for me. This is not helpful for me. And when we disengage from that voice, it's going to quiet down, because it's going to realize that you're not paying attention to it in the way that you used to. You're not giving it any power anymore. Almost as if it's now gone from this scary, overbearing, demanding parent or coach type figure, and then you've changed the dynamic and the relationship with that voice and said, all right, buddy, I heard what you said. I understand you might be offended or hurt or feel slighted or treated disrespectfully in some way, but let's not make a big deal about this. It doesn't need to be made into a big deal. And when you start to treat that voice as if it's not that important and you don't really have to listen to it, because you don't, life takes on a different meaning, because now you become that presence. Now you start to become the awareness of those thoughts. And when you sit in that awareness and you're not over-identified with the drama, life is more peaceful, because we don't believe ourselves to be the ego. We can have the ego that creates these thoughts to be there, but it doesn't define us. It doesn't determine our mood anymore. It doesn't drag us away. It doesn't reel us in on the hook of drama. So if you get caught up in the hook of drama, or you know somebody that does and you think they might benefit from the message, please share this video with them. And this is a beautiful way for us to deepen our relationships with each other. And it's a beautiful opportunity to practice some self-care and not get involved in unnecessary drama. So continue to practice awareness, don't bite the hook, and take care of yourself and each other. And thank you for watching. I'll see you down the trail.